Welcome to the Farmers Supply Association Agri Report. I'm Randy Klepechka, agronomist with Farmers Supply Association. We're taping on the 5th day of July. We've really been on the fast track this year with our crops, especially the rice crop, and looks like that's fixing to change. You know, we've had a lot of hot weather, not a lot of rainfall, but again, we've got some changes coming up. We had a little system go through last night with some decent rainfall amounts in places. Some got, you know, more than others, as it always works. But, you know, next week it looks like we're going to get some moisture from Hurricane Beryl, and at that point I think we're going to see quite a bit of rain they're forecasting, and some, you know, temperatures in the 80s for at least much of the next week. So, you know, we're definitely going to change, and we'll slow this crop down a little bit. You know, there's good points to that and bad points to that. I kind of like being on the fast track and getting it over with, but there's some benefits of some cooler temperatures as well, as long as we don't get too excessive with the rainfall. On this program, I want to talk about some different rice management items. You know, we're getting in that home stretch right now, and just want to talk about some of the things we need to be considering at this point in the year. We're going to talk about weed control, diseases, and also insects, and things we're, you know, to look at as we finish the year. This particular field I'm looking at right now, or I'm in right now, this is a field of Rice Tech 7301. If you look closely, you can see that there's a lot of heading going on, especially on the other side of the field. So that's what I'm talking about, being on the fast track. You know, July 5th, and we've got this much heading going on. And there's actually, once you get out in there, especially on the other side of the field, there's more heading going on, and rice heads are starting to turn over, and you actually get some milk in them. So again, we're moving along pretty quick out here. Again, this is Rice Tech 7301. First thing I want to talk about is weed control, and we're, you know, getting kind of to the end of the line on that. Especially with grass control. You know, grass control at this point, this field's definitely too far along. We've got some later fields out there that, still getting some grass control questions about. Once that rice, that internode starts moving, we get to that reproductive stage, we're kind of limited in what we can use. Really about the only thing after green ring really is clincher or maybe Rebel X. So basically, when we get to that point, it's almost like throwing a Hail Mary at it, because a lot of times that grass is going to be coming through the top of the canopy, and, you know, any application like that, at best, is going to get some suppression. You know, if the rice is going to go down, maybe you need to go ahead and try to do something to avoid that lodging if you can, and get some suppression out at it. But a lot of times, again, it's just a Hail Mary, and sometimes you'll get benefit and sometimes you won't. As far as some of the black-seeded weeds, those are a little more practical to control right now. In fact, it's the best time to control some of them. As far as coffee beans go, of course, Blazer's always been our go-to material there, some of the generics that we have in that area. So I think one of the things we need to consider with these Blazer applications is try to get them out there before that flag leaf is fully extended. You know, when that flag leaf is fully extended, you know, Blazer's pretty notorious for burning the leaves. So, you know, if I've got enough coffee beans, I'm not too worried about that. But if I don't have very many, coffee beans out there, I'm kind of hesitant to go burn those flag leaves. So, you know, you got to do what you got to do. But again, if there's not much in the way of coffee beans, or you're making that a kind of an automatic treatment, really think about that. I think the label says do not apply past the boot stage, whatever that means. So again, let's just try to avoid burning those flag leaves when we don't have to. Indigo. It's one of my most hated weeds. It kind of comes through late in the season, and it's a black-seeded weed as well, so it can cause dockage when it gets to the elevator. So, you know, we need to control those if we can, but they're pretty difficult sometimes. Gambit is really good on them once they're just starting to come through that canopy. If you can hit it with Gambit, you know, it's hard to get Gambit sprayed sometimes because of damage to soybeans, even STS soybeans, but Gambit can be very good at, controlling those. Permit Plus, we can get some pretty good seed head suppression with Permit Plus at that stage. You don't need to do it before the blooms come out. One other option is Lockdown. That's a biological material. It used to be called Coligo when it first came out, like in the late 70s or early 80s. But Coligo is something that you've got to plan for. You know, we just can't go up to the co-op and get Coligo. There's actually a manufacturer in Fayetteville that's processing some Coligo right now. So there's going to be some available around the 15th of July. So if you're thinking about Coligo, give me a call, and we're trying to get you hooked up on that. But again, it's going to be about the 15th of July before we can get some, and you want to get that put out before the indigos start blooming. So, need to plan ahead on that, and it's not just something you go to the store whenever you want it. So again, that's a little different situation with that herbicide. Next thing, diseases. Diseases have been fairly light this year. Again, that goes back to a lot of that dry, hot weather. Sheath blight's been very limited so far in the fields that I've been in. Again, if we have that weather pattern change that I was talking about, we get wetter and cooler next week, that sheath blight could blow up. It actually did that last year. So, you know, if we can get to heading stage without getting to a treatment level of sheath blight, we're normally okay. But if our rice is a little further behind and we get that weather next week, you really need to be watching for sheath blight and make applications if needed. Blast, we've seen leaf lesions of blast, especially on some of the medium grains like CLM04, and also got a call on some Taurus down south of our area here. You know, medium grains are notorious for getting leaf blast and not necessarily getting the head blast. So, you know, it's a good thing, but it makes it kind of tough on making a decision on whether to treat or not. So, again, with blast, if you're seeing those leaf lesions on some of these medium grains, and the weather pattern changes and it's kind of cool and wet, you might want to be thinking about a fungicide application, or even two if situations are bad enough. But so anyway, keep that in mind. Again, that's especially on the medium grains. Again, CLM04 and Taurus is what I've seen and heard on. A couple of other diseases we worry about are really three: is kernel smut and fall smut, and also narrow brown leaf spot. These are diseases you're not going to see in time. These are diseases that show up kind of after the fact and when it's too late to apply a fungicide. So you need to plan for these. You know, if you've got susceptible varieties to the smuts and you're maybe over fertilizing with nitrogen, you're trying to press or push yield with nitrogen, then you need to be thinking about, again, a kernel smut or fall smut application. With narrow brown leaf spot, this is a little more or less common disease, but when it hits, sometimes it can hit you pretty good on yield. So with narrow brown leaf spot, be aware of the varieties that are more susceptible. And if you have low potash levels in your soil, you haven't fertilized with potash like you need, and these are areas that are more prone, I think, to get narrow brown leaf spot. So keep that in mind. All of these smuts and the narrow brown leaf spot, we need to make a propiconazole, you know, tilt or generic tilt application during the boot stage before those heads are out. So again, about the time that flag leaf just barely gets out and you see the base of it on to the boot stage, but certainly before the heads start coming out and splitting that boot. So those are the major diseases we're talking about right now. Products: Amistar Top, Quilt XL, and generic Quilt for the sheath blight and the blast. And again, any of the propiconazole products for the smuts or the narrow brown leaf spot. So those are your products of choice right there. And again, the timing for most of this is going to be, you know, during that early boot stage, about the time the flag leaf's out of there until it's, you know, before the boot actually splits open. It would be the timing on these. I want to finish up with insects, and of course we'll be talking about rice stink bug here. In a field like this one, a lot of it's headed out already. It's about time to start scouting for stink bugs, but we really don't want to make a treatment if we don't have to at this stage. We want to wait till that field gets in the soft dough stage. That's when we get the damage, quality damage, peck damage, and those kind of things. So, you know, spraying right now, controlling them now may not do you that much good, because, you know, at one time back in the day, we used to think it caused quite a bit of yield loss, but we found out since then it's mainly the peck and the quality loss. So those come from that soft dough stage on. So if you're seeing, you know, stink bugs out there now, don't get too worked up unless you have very high numbers, like maybe 12 to 15 per 10 sweeps. If you get those kind of numbers, then you may need to think about making a insecticide application. But for the most part, let's wait until that soft dough stage, and then when we get numbers of like 10 per 10 sweeps, then we need to start thinking about making those insecticide applications at that point. Again, 12 to 15 early on at least, and then 10 once we get into that soft dough stage and beyond. As far as products, there's a change this year. We're looking at using Tenchu, Tenchu, for the rice stink bug. You know, Tenchu's been around a long time. There just never has been any product available. But now, with the resistance we have to the pyrethroids, like the lambda and those kind of things, we need something different. So the Tenchu, the people at Belcham Chemical, Tenchu makers, they've really upped their production, and they're supposed to have enough product out there to cover all of our needs. So hopefully they do. So Tenchu is going to be our go-to product. Indigo will not be labeled unless there's not enough Tenchu out there. If comes to the fact that tenchu is not as prevalent as we thought and we are running out, then they can get an emergency label for indigo. But as of right now, indigo is not going to be labeled, so we really need to go with tenchu. The pyrethroids, the lambda, the generic karate, those kind of things just don't work good enough anymore. And I know there's going to be some people out there using them, but for the last 4 years, I've quit recommending them because what I've seen in the field is just very, very poor, limited control at best. If anything, they just, they kill the beneficials, and sometimes the stink bug numbers are actually higher. And some of the university tests have shown that, where they use, the generic pyrethroids like the lambda, the stink bug numbers are actually higher. So really no benefit for using those. We need to look at tenchu when we get those numbers there is where we need to be with our stink bugs. And so that's kind of where we're at right now with our rice crop. Just a lot of different pests that we need to be thinking about right now, monitoring and treating when we need. And if you've got any questions on any of that, you can contact me through Farmer Supply Association. And this has been Randy Kopechka with your Farmer Supply Association Agri Report for July.